We know, every one of us, that in the end all will be well. For God will care for us and give us victory and peace. And when peace comes, remember, it will be for us, the children of today, to make the world of tomorrow a better and happier place.
It was the early autumn of 1939, just weeks after Nazi Germany invaded Poland, and Great Britain had officially declared war. Dark clouds loomed across Europe, casting an ominous shadow over the future of the royal family. At that time, Princess Elizabeth was only 13 years old, an inquisitive child who had grown up surrounded by luxury and tradition. Few would have guessed that within a few short years, she would step away from the palace gates and into the fray of World War II. By 1940, the relentless bombing campaigns known as the Blitz had reduced parts of London to smoking rubble. Shattered glass and twisted steel littered the streets, and sleepless nights under the eerie wail of air raid sirens had become the new normal. While many citizens cowered in shelters, the princess watched these events from behind the palace walls, ever more determined to do something meaningful. Still a teenager, Elizabeth felt the weight of her country's suffering. She began pleading with her father, King George VI, insisting that she should be allowed to play a bigger role in her nation's struggle. Her pleas were initially dismissed. The crown had strict rules about royal tradition, and the thought of a young princess in uniform was nothing short of shocking. By 1941, the war had escalated, drawing in forces from across the globe. Whispers of Japanese expansion in the Far East and the United States entering the conflict fueled the tension. Princess Elizabeth, now 15, spent her days visiting hospitals and volunteering in whatever capacity she was permitted. She was often photographed offering words of encouragement to wounded soldiers, her bright optimism a flicker of light amid the darkness. Still, she yearned to truly serve. Behind closed doors, she pored over maps of war-torn Europe, memorizing the front lines and listening intently to wartime broadcasts. Royal duty held her at a distance, but her determination was growing every day. Then came 1943. The war raged on, and London was bearing deep scars of the conflict. It was at this moment that Elizabeth made a bold decision. She would keep pushing until she was allowed to enlist. She confided in her younger sister, Princess Margaret, who listened with wide-eyed astonishment. Though Margaret had no desire to join the military, she supported her sister's unshakable resolve. The two of them exchanged whispered plans late at night, imagining a day when Elizabeth could drive ambulances or fix engines like any ordinary citizen. It was a radical thought for a princess, but something about the idea ignited a spark in her. By 1944, the tide of the war had begun to turn, with the Allies launching pivotal operations in France. The hopes of a nation soared as news of victories trickled in, but the Nazi threat was still very real, and the cost in lives continued to climb. One day, in a private meeting, Elizabeth made her case directly to her father once again. She argued that if other young women were risking their lives on the front lines, she should be allowed to do the same. The king hesitated. He feared for her safety, and he worried about the optics of a royal heir in uniform. But the princess's resolve was unwavering. She insisted that she couldn't just sit idly by while so many British families sacrificed their sons, daughters, mothers, and fathers. Finally, in February 1945, when Princess Elizabeth was 18, King George VI relented. The news shocked the aristocracy and the press alike. But the princess was resolute. She joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service, the women's branch of the British Army, becoming the first female member of the royal family to actively serve. This was no ceremonial position. Almost immediately, Elizabeth began her training in mechanics, learning how to fix trucks, jeeps, and other military vehicles. The sight of the princess in greasy overalls, her hair tied back and streaked with oil, was a revelation to those who had only seen her in glamorous gowns. She also trained as a military truck driver, navigating clunky vehicles through rough roads and bombed-out streets. Over the next few months, she split her time between her royal duties and her service. The people of Britain were in awe at the image of their princess covered in engine oil, working side by side with ordinary soldiers. It was not a publicity stunt. She truly wanted to contribute. Her hands became calloused. She learned to read engine diagrams, strip down parts, and reassemble entire vehicles. Occasionally, she would stumble, making simple mistakes, but she always picked herself up, determined to master her new skills. She spent long hours bent over open hoods in drafty garages, ignoring the cold and the dirt. Meanwhile, across the Channel, Allied forces continued to press deeper into Nazi-held territory. One particular day in March 1945 stands out in the memories of her comrades. They recall the princess, face smudged with oil, calmly reassuring a frantic driver whose truck had broken down on a supply run. With her trademark composure, Elizabeth took charge, diagnosing the fault with methodical precision and guiding her fellow trainees through the repair. That truck eventually made it to its destination, delivering vital equipment to frontline troops preparing for a major offensive. The story of this moment found its way into local newspapers, fueling national pride during one of the most desperate phases of the war. By April 1945, news of Adolf Hitler's weakening hold on Germany sparked cautious optimism. The princess continued her rigorous schedule, maneuvering trucks on and off military bases while the monarchy braced for the war's final stages. She might have been heir to the throne, but in those days, behind the wheel of an army vehicle, her hands stained with grease, Elizabeth was just another mechanic doing her bit for Britain's victory. When Victory in Europe Day finally dawned on May 8, 1945, celebrations erupted across the country. People flooded the streets of London, singing and dancing in wild jubilation. The princess, wearing her ATS uniform, slipped into the crowds incognito, joining the spontaneous parties that erupted around Buckingham Palace. She blended in so well that many revelers had no idea they were standing beside the future Queen of England. Photographs from that day show a young woman with a radiant smile, standing shoulder to shoulder with ordinary citizens amid a roaring crowd, letting her guard down just this once. As the dust settled and the pages of history turned, many believed the princess's wartime service had been merely symbolic. But those who served alongside her remembered a determined young woman who refused special treatment. Even high-ranking officers marveled at her willingness to learn the gritty details of vehicle maintenance, her calm demeanor under pressure, and her unwavering sense of duty. Looking back, it was a pivotal chapter in the life of someone the world would come to know as Queen Elizabeth II, a monarch defined by poise, determination, and a steadfast commitment to her people. In the years that followed, this remarkable part of her life became more of a historical footnote than a widely discussed milestone. Yet it remains a testament to her character, a princess who, at the height of World War II, set aside royal protocols, donned a uniform, and served her country in a time of profound crisis. No matter what one might think of the monarchy, the image of a teenage heir turning wrenches under the roar of enemy planes has never lost its shock value. That is the hidden legacy of Queen Elizabeth's World War II service, a legacy born from grim necessity, nurtured by unwavering resolve, and sealed in the sweaty, oil-stained workshop of Britain's armed forces. It was this chapter, forged in the chaos of war, that would help shape her reign for decades to come, proving to the world, and perhaps even to herself, that she was more than just a figurehead. She was a mechanic, a driver, and, most shockingly of all, a princess who stepped beyond her palace walls to share in her nation's struggle. And that concludes our journey into the hidden wartime legacy of Queen Elizabeth. But stay tuned, because in our very next video, we'll be diving headfirst into the extraordinary life of Hannie Schaft, the Dutch resistance fighter whose fearless defiance against the Nazi regime became the stuff of legend. Her tale is both shocking and inspiring, and it's sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. Make sure you don't miss it.
Her Royal Highness, Princess Elizabeth.
In wishing you all good evening, I feel that I am speaking to friends and companions who have shared with my sister and myself many a happy children's hour. Thousands of you in this country have had to leave your homes and be separated from your fathers and mothers. My sister Margaret Rose and I feel so much for you, as we know from experience what it means to be away from those we love most of all. To you living in new surroundings, we send a message of true sympathy, and at the same time, we would like to thank the kind people who have welcomed you to their homes in the country. All of us children who are still at home think continually of our friends and relations who have gone overseas, who have traveled thousands of miles to find a wartime home and a kindly welcome in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and the United States of America. My sister and I feel we know quite a lot about these countries. Our father and mother have so often talked to us of their visits to different parts of the world. So it is not difficult for us to picture the sort of life you are all leading, and to think of all the new sights you must be seeing, and the adventures you must be having. But I am sure that you too are often thinking of the old country. I know you won't forget us. It is just because we are not forgetting you that I want on behalf of all the children at home, to send you our love and best wishes, to you and to your kind hosts as well. Before I finish, I can truthfully say to you all that we children at home are full of cheerfulness and courage. We are trying to do all we can to help our gallant sailors, soldiers, and airmen. And we are trying, too, to bear our own share of the danger and sadness of war. We know, every one of us, that in the end all will be well, for God will care for us and give us victory and peace. And when peace comes, remember, it will be for us, the children of today, to make the world of tomorrow a better and happier place. My sister is by my side, and we are both going to say good night to you. Come on, Margaret. Good night, children. Good night, and good luck to you all.